Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Presence Podcast, where I interview the most influential people in real estate. My guest today is Chad Roffers, the founder and CEO of Concierge Auctions, a $2 billion global auction platform. Chad is a successful serial entrepreneur and a seasoned marketer who knows how to reach a global audience. In this conversation, we'll talk about his lessons learned in building and selling 3 companies. We'll share advice for agents looking to reach international buyers, and we'll take a closer look at what goes into successfully marketing a $140 million property. So Chad, welcome to the show. Thank you for being on.
It's great to be here, Malty. I guess we ran into each other briefly in Vegas. I know you had a lot going on, but it was good to see you in person.
Yeah, it was great to see you. And we'll dive into some of the same topics around the acquisition of your company. I want to talk about that. But to start, I read that you worked with the eBay founding team in the early days. And then as a real estate agent at Michael Saunders and Company in the early 2000s. And I wanted to ask you about those 2 experiences and whether you recall an aha moment where you realized that real estate could be sold at auction.
That's a great question. And the short answer is yes, I do remember the aha. I also had a second, probably more important aha after the first one. I'm happy to share that with you. But the aha was I was working in tech in the Bay Area or in and around a lot of innovative startups, right? And at the first wave of the internet, I mean, anything was possible. If you could dream it, you could get funding, which was pretty amazing. And almost every single category was being explored except for real estate.
Yeah.
Really, the only real estate deal that was funded at the time, interestingly enough, was Realtor.com, which today we know, NAR and then News Corp, but the original founder really was an interesting individual who really bought the rights to use the brand and wasn't affiliated with any of them, right? So that was going on. And aside from that, there was nothing really happening in and around real estate. And so the aha was, well, why isn't anything happening around real estate?
Did you realize at the same time why there wasn't more activity?
You must be a psychic in your prior life. The second aha that I had, and there was probably a third, a fourth, and a fifth. The fifth probably was one of the more recent kind of innovations in our business, even we're now 17 years in. But the second one was, I know nothing about real estate at all. And fortunately, I was humble enough to say to myself, I better go figure out this industry before I try to change it, which is why I went to work for Michael Saunders.
Yeah. Interesting. So you already knew you want to bring technology to the real estate world, and therefore you better immerse yourself in this world and learn from someone who's been there, done that.
Yeah. And it was relatively late in the first .com wave. So this was right around 99, 2000.
Yeah.
So there were starting to be enough failures out there that was no longer just get funded and become a paper millionaire. Like you actually had to have a sustainable business.
Mm-hmm.
And so I needed to really understand this. So I started at the bottom. I was holding open houses for any agent who'd let me hold their listing open, like that far at the bottom.
Yeah. I love that. And I think that's great advice for aspiring entrepreneurs. So many of the best ideas are not the obvious ideas that any consumer is going to have. Many of the best ideas come from people who are outsiders to an industry, but go and do the work and immerse themselves to really understand what the problems are, and then bring the technology lens to understand what the possible solutions could be given what's happening in technology and innovation. And I think it's really applicable right now to the AI space, where
Yeah.
it's greenfield, lots of opportunity in all industries. And I believe the best companies are going to be the ones that are focused on specific industries and are immersed enough to really understand the current pain points and then apply AI to solve those pain points.
I think you're right. It's interesting. I got an email today from a company called Conversica, and I remember my CTO let me think about this, 2016, brought them in to give me a demo. So that's like forever ago, right? That's
Yeah.
forever ago. But I was interesting in that I was surprised to see A, they were still at it, and B, their times come. Like they were doing
Mm.
AI before AI was a thing. And I had a great CTO, really forward thinking guy. His name is Jacob Cantelli, and just always just really forward thinking. And they brought them to me, and I could see the application, but at the same time, it was just way too far out there for a practical use case for us.
Yeah.
But I bet you that today they've probably learned a lot and refined their offering. It's like, now I think I can use it.
Yeah. Yeah. Timing is everything. And if you stick with it long enough as a founder, you give yourself enough time and enough chances to succeed. And that's why it's so important not to pay too much attention to the hype cycles and to just stick with it. And the time will come as long as you have enough belief that the technology is real. So I love that example. And I think it's great for founders out there who are in those early stages and are trying to get to product market fit. And it's really hard. You got to stick to it long enough to give yourself a chance.
That, and also I look today, the men and women that have succeeded, which the definition of success in our society, I guess, is financial. So they've succeeded certainly financially, and they've succeeded in other ways too, are the people who kind of doubled down around 2000. The people that I saw when things were terrible,
Mm-hmm.
right? And they stuck it out, and wow, like they were the ones that absolutely killed it. And I'm sure everyone's had down rounds and funding's drying up and all these things. But if you can start now, wonderful, great time to
Yeah.
start. Or if you can get through it,
I,
stick it
I
out.
couldn't agree more. There's an incredible number of really amazing companies that have been founded during recessions, and certainly 2001, 2008, same thing, and the following years. And if you can succeed during the worst of circumstances, you will crush it when the market's working in your favor. And
Yeah.
it's certainly applicable to tech companies, but also to real estate agents in this environment who are facing more headwinds than a year ago, 2 years ago. And my advice is always focus on market share, focus on building a really great business. Don't get too caught up in year over year growth. As long as you're winning in your market, once the market comes back, you're in a great position. And often these down cycles are the perfect times to go back and work on the business and put yourself in a better position to succeed when the market comes back. So since those early days, you have founded and sold multiple businesses, most recently Concierge Auctions. So tell us more about that acquisition. What did the process look like leading up to it? And what have things looked like since?
Yeah, it's a good time. We're coming up on the 2 year mark. It'll be 2 years in November. And usually by 2 years in, it's working or it didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And we had some learnings along the way, but all that said, it's been phenomenal. And in hindsight, we were out going to raise some equity, and I hired an investment bank to run up that process, and they encouraged us to run kind of a dual strategic investor, buyer, and financial kind of path. And we had options in both categories. And It's interesting. Ultimately, it wasn't the high bidder that we chose. Ironically, I'm in the auction business, right? And so it's
Hmm.
all about the high bidder. But in the process of raising capital or the partial sale of our business, I didn't choose the highest bidder, but I chose the partner that I thought would be the best long-term partner. And it's worked out. Yeah.
That's great.
And
Congrats.
I still retained a big stake,
Yeah.
which is great. And I think there's meaningful upside
Yeah.
to stick it out for the long haul.
What's the best part and what's the worst part of selling your business?
Hmm. Okay. The worst part is I have to share the wins and losses proportionally. And I'm not thinking so much about the economics. It's actually more of the satisfaction of the wins and, the losses too. I mean, nobody likes to lose, but I think Jordan said, who's been a customer of mine, you either win or you learn. And so, the losses, as long as you're learning from them and it's not a repeat learning, they're okay.
Yeah.
And so I think that's been the hardest part is having to share that. The exhilaration's the word, satisfaction,
Hmm.
right? The easiest part is, I don't care how successful you are. I mean, think of like Elon Musk with SpaceX and Tesla, which at the time they weren't startups, but when you're sweating payroll, I don't miss that. I don't miss
Me
that at
neither.
all.
It was the best thing of raising venture capital
Right?
was no longer having to worry about the next month every single month.
Yeah.
It is a stressful thing to do for all the bootstrapped founders out there and the people doing it without outside investment.
Yeah.
Ton of respect for everyone who pulls it off successfully. For the business owners out there listening, how can someone increase their chances of getting acquired? You've done it twice, right?
Three
Three times.
times. So I think it's important, one, that you own your category.
Okay.
And, it's funny. I went to the University of Colorado and Deion Sanders is a new coach. If you're a sports fan, it's hard to miss what's going on. I actually took my daughter there for a game. It was a blast. He's saying like, I want to go out and dominate. I don't want to just win. I want to dominate, right? Like that's what he's been saying to his players and to the
Yeah.
media and whatever. But I think your niche, you want to dominate it. And sometimes it's fortune about how big the niche is. But no matter how big the niche is or niche, however you want to say it, you want to have disproportionate share.
Yeah.
And if you're creating a category, then great. Like create it, but then dominate it. If you're coming into a category, figure out how to dominate it. I think that we're in a society, a winner take all or take most type of business world.
Yeah.
And so I think that's probably the number one thing that I would say.
Yep. Any other advice for preparing a business for an acquisition? And perhaps we can make it specific to real estate agents who
Yeah.
are thinking about their legacy and creating a business that at some point can be sold either to strategics, brokerages, other teams, or
Yeah.
can be handed down to the next generation.
Great question. The key is it can't just be the multi show or the Chad show. And there's a time for the founder, the president, or the CEO to, be the hero, right? Be the visionary. And every business needs that. That said, there has to be sustainable kind of scale and some sort of inherent asset or mechanism that allows the business to sustain and thrive, even when there's transition period where every founders leave and go start something new or whatever. I think that's really important. And I think that's a hard thing for an individual agent because they typically are such a big part of the show.
Yeah. I think it's great advice. Both of those points, owning the category, which I want to ask you a follow-up question on, and also not being too reliant on you as the founder and making that transition from the early days where you absolutely should leverage your personality, your network, your capabilities as much as possible and be in the weeds. There comes the time when you got to start giving away the Legos, letting the team figure it out, stepping away. And one good way to test it is to go on vacation and see what happens in the business. If it slows down or grinds to a halt, then it's not ready to be acquired by anyone because it's so reliant on you. But on that first point, owning a category starts with defining a category. And a mistake I see certainly real estate agents make is they try to be all things to all people because they don't want to lose out on business. And you've done an amazing job defining a niche. Can you say more about how you reached that decision on this is the market that I want to go after? This is the category that I'm going to focus on and eventually will own as a category.
Yeah. And I'll also say that we're 17 years in to this concierge journey, and I still get tested with opportunities to go outside our lane. And no matter how good it may look, I come back to, no, that's a bad idea. There's a lady who talked about owning a category. Her name is Louise Sunshine, and she really pioneered project marketing, right?
Yeah.
Selling for developers in New York. She worked for Trump. She's actually on record as saying there was like a PBS frontline about her. She's the only person successfully sued him for a commission or something to that effect. So she's no pushover, right? She's tough. But she ultimately sold and merged with the Corcoran Group, and now it's called Corcoran Sunshine, and they still own that category in New York. And I kind of heard her third party talk about Concierge and about Laura and about me, and she's like, I watched them be incredibly focused. And it's a great compliment because it's hard. And I think even today, with a mature business, I'm asking my team, is there ways that we can get even more focused?
Yeah. It's a constant
than
battle.
we are, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's absolutely a superpower. All of the great founders I know have this gift to have extreme clarity of thought, which then translates to extreme focus in the business on the things that really truly matter. So I love that piece of advice. What are some misconceptions people have about selling a property at auction?
The number one misconception, which is less prevalent than it was when we started this business, but is it a distressed situation?
Mm-hmm.
Number one, I go to the barber, right? She or he asks me, what do I do? And I'm like, I'm auctioneer. What do you auction? And then do you talk fast, right? So like those are
Mm-hmm.
and then when I say real estate and no, it's mostly on the computer, then the next question is, well, are these people in foreclosure, right? Which 1% of our business are people that have a financial kind of issue.
Yeah.
99% is the opposite of that. But that's the number one.
Yeah. And these are mostly very high-end listings, presumably. What's the highest priced listing that you've sold?
So a property last year called The One in Bel Air, and we sold it for 141 million. It was the highest listed property sold in the United States last year and the highest property ever sold at auction.
Well, that's incredible. What goes
It was fun.
into preparing and then marketing a high-end listing like The One?
Today, if we get a call from a seller almost anywhere in the world, we've been active now in 40 states and 33 countries, so pretty wide footprint. We have a well-engineered process and platform that any property, whether it's the $150 million listing or a $5 million listing, can fit into.
Yeah.
The key is it's actually not doing more just because it's an expensive property. It's the steps that you take, painstaking attention to detail.
Yeah.
So I think when you get to a high stakes transaction like The One, we're doing laser eye surgery, not massage. Okay.
Yeah.
So like you don't wing laser eye surgery. It doesn't go well.
Hmm.
And so that's how we prepare for every assignment, but the high stakes ones in particular.
What are the most important marketing channels that you use to promote these listings? In your time.
Database, database,
Okay.
database, right? That was kind of a foundational thing early on that I was unreasonable about, but it was proved to be the right decision, which we went on Salesforce in 2009 and have invested tens of millions of dollars in our CRM platform. Okay.
Yeah.
And with databases, it's growing it and cultivating it. And you've got to do both. And that's another area where I think owning your niche and a winner take all approach is really important because we don't have to start from scratch on a property that we take on, but we're building on all of the sum of all the parts. That's really the most important thing.
And where are the contacts in your database coming from? What channels are you using to attract us?
When we look at the database, when it started with, one property at a time. So today, for a typical property that we auction, we'll generate 250 to 1,000 buyer inquiries. Okay. And when we started, 100% of them were new to us. Today, it's 50-50,
Mm-hmm.
right? So 50% of the time, the buyer was already in our world. And that said, increasingly, our spend is on growing and meeting consumers at the very top of the funnel and talking about just overall what our value proposition is, and then educating them about a given property versus when we started with, we have to educate people about a specific property and grow it that way.
Got it. And these are high net worth individuals. So do you find them on Facebook? Can agents find them on TikTok? Obviously,
Yeah.
they're searching on Google. Just
Yeah.
curious, a lot of times, the pushback that someone might give to digital channels is, it's hard to reach the right audience, the right high end audience. But I think that's changed.
It's changed. And also, I say this to the team too, like we have to be okay kissing frogs.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And especially in today's world, as we know, wealth comes in so many sizes and colors and shapes, and it's so different.
Yeah.
And that said, wealthy people are people too. And just because you're wealthy doesn't mean that you're not sitting on your plane getting ready to take off and you just need a break from the action and you scroll through your Instagram feed, right? They do.
100%. Yeah. I read somewhere that you worked with Michael Jordan. Is that right?
Yeah,
Okay. I got to hear more about this story. Did he sell a home with you?
he did. Well, he didn't. He hired me to sell a house. I failed. So it's like you win or you learn. So Michael, if you're listening to this, I learned,
Yeah.
which was what I learned from that is, first of all, he's a really smart guy, very successful person. And but ultimately on that, a good lesson for any business person, intermediaries are important, but you have to be having the conversation with whoever's making the decision. And so 8 years later or whatever it is, the house is still for sale. And, in hindsight, we would have sold it for more than he's asking for today. So I wish I could have that one back. So I'd sell it this time.
Thanks for sharing that story. Many of the luxury markets around the US have seen an influx of international buyers over the years. What advice do you have for agents who are looking to expand their footprint internationally?
I think you've got to go build relationships with people in the market you're trying to reach. I can think of another customer of yours. I won't say his name because I don't have permission to, but top agent who texted me last week in the middle of the night, who's like, I want to buy a place in Paris. Do you have somebody that you trust in that market? And I do. I'm like, here's 3 people that I know and trust in that market. And so you need connections in the market you're targeting to, one, it's a feeder for prospects, but I think it's also a conduit for you to understand what's important to them and what's not important to them. And I think you need credibility and you need trust if you're trying to do business with somebody from out of the market.
Yeah. Yeah. So much of that business happens via referrals, and you need to build the relationships to get the referrals. You are big on giving back. Tell us about the Key for Key program you started and what it means to you and what it is.
Yeah, it means a lot. So thank you for asking about it. And in fact, one of the key pillars for us is doubling down on our Key for Key program. Our Key for Key program is where we fund sometimes 100%, sometimes a portion, but we take dollars from every transaction and fund or put toward the funding of a Key for Key build, which is either a Habitat for Humanity build or a TECHO, which is an organization primarily operating in Central America that builds a full house for a family in need. And the companies, they're based in Santa Monica. Caroline Pinnell runs that business. She's a great person and everybody should get to know her. And what they exist to do is be a conduit between the real estate brokerage community and in different organizations that are building homes for people in need, right? So we've always kind of been the ones writing the check. But one of the things that I know about my client, the seller and the buyers, are also very civic minded and philanthropic. And so I want to give them the opportunity to participate alongside us in those builds. So that's something that we've done. We can do a better job. There was a period of time early on where we're doing a great job of getting our sellers to contribute alongside us. We would match what they would contribute. And I'm getting back to that because I think it's really important. And all that said, of course, the main purpose of this is to do the right thing, right? Yeah. But where I got the idea was, my average employee is on the cusp of being a Generation Z and a millennial, right? They're somewhere in that. And my average seller of a $20 million house we're selling in Bel Air was listed for $38 million. A lot of my sellers are in their 30s and 40s, but a lot of them are 50, 60, 70 years old, right?
Yeah.
Or they're incredibly successful. They're a TikTok star. They're on TV, whatever. They can be unrelatable. And so what I really wanted the company to understand is that our seller might be a little bit unrelatable, but this family that we want to build a house for in El Salvador is totally relatable. Their needs totally relatable. And we're committed to this. And so that's the deeper why. One, it's just the right thing to do. And our average transaction is so high. It's not unusual that they're 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 million bucks. The low end, maybe they're $2.5 million. And some deals are harder than others. Sometimes in real estate, ending the transaction with both buyer, seller, the buyer's agent, the seller's agent, everybody happy. Like that happens, but it's not easy to get there sometimes.
Yeah.
And so while you're working through any of those difficulties, it's helpful to be doing a good thing no matter what.
I love that. You're supporting a really great and important cause, and you're giving your employees purpose in their work and something to feel really good about supporting. So I love that approach. Lastly, where can people find you online? Where can they connect with you?
Sure. So you can find me at chadroffers.com. That's probably the easiest place to find me. I'm the world's worst social media person, but I am on Twitter or X. So you can find me on Twitter. Those are my two favorite channels, and LinkedIn as well.
Yeah. I have one more question for you. You've been a luxury presence client for now, I believe, coming up on 4 or 5 years. What's the experience been like for you?
It's been amazing. I was going to compliment you. Like any growing company, you've got people coming in and out of roles. And usually it's because they're getting promoted, right? We're promoting somebody in our organization today who's been with us maybe 4 or 5 years, a super bright guy. And this is probably his 5th promotion in 5 years. Like he's a superstar, right? So he's constantly getting promoted and giving responsibility. And so somebody steps into whatever he was doing last. And my experience with luxury presence has been anytime somebody stepped in because somebody's moving on to bigger and better things, there has never been a drop off of service, and it's been proactive, which I think is also a great tip for any business, which is whoever touched the customer last, or there's a handoff and who's touching the customer, just reach out and tell them that I'm now your liaison. And if you need anything or whatever, like, and you guys do that amazingly well.
Thank you. Appreciate the kind words and appreciate you for being a client. Thank you so much for the conversation. I really enjoyed it and I learned a lot. So thank you.
Malti, thank you very much and have a great day and see you soon.
See you soon.